She was just a civilian range technician. Nobody knew her name. Nobody cared to ask. The SEALs barely acknowledged her existence as she meticulously set up their targets day after day. Their dismissive glances said everything, until that moment when Chief Halston watched her adjust a target with mathematical precision and made a decision that would change everything. He handed her his rifle. The range went silent. One breath, one shot. And suddenly, everyone wanted to know who she really was. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing for more untold stories of extraordinary people living in ordinary shadows. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the desert range as Corinne Lavelle methodically arranged the target systems. The air was still cool, but it wouldn't last. Heat mirages would begin distorting sight pictures within the hour. She made note of this in her small leather notebook, along with barometric pressure readings and wind patterns. 5 years at this facility, and most days blended together in comfortable anonymity. Today would be different. She could feel it in the air. The SEAL team arrived in 2 transport vehicles, dust billowing behind them. Commander Axel Thorne stepped out first, his weathered face set in stern concentration. This was the final day of qualification drills. The shooters looked exhausted, pushed to their limits. "Range is prepared, sir," Corinne said, approaching with clipboards. "Environmental conditions documented. Wind shifting northwest at 7 to 12 miles per hour." Commander Thorne barely glanced at her. "Thank you, miss." "Lavelle," she supplied, though she'd prepared this range for him at least 20 times before. "Right." He turned away immediately, addressing his team. "Gentlemen, this is your final qualification. The last target's at 1,200 yards. Conditions aren't ideal, but neither is combat." Corinne retreated to her station, invisible once more. As the SEALs set up their positions, she observed their movements with analytical precision. Lieutenant Merrick, the team's second in command, caught her watching and nudged his teammate. "Look at this civilian micromanaging our range," he said, voice pitched to Carrie. "Probably learned everything from video games." Laughter rippled through the group. Corinne didn't react, continuing her work. When she approached with equipment, she was referred to only as range tech or miss. She had perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. Eyes down, movements efficient, presence minimal. The qualification began. The first 3 distances posed little challenge for the elite team. At 800 yards, a few began to struggle. Corinne recorded each shot meticulously, noting patterns in the misses, anticipating recoil, breathing inconsistency, improper follow-through. When they reached the final target at 1,200 yards, the morning heat had risen. Wind gusted unpredictably. Petty Officer Riordan missed 3 consecutive shots and threw down his spotting scope in frustration. "This is impossible in these conditions," he complained. Commander Thorne stepped forward. "The enemy doesn't care about conditions, Riordan." Lieutenant Merrick took position next, adjusting his scope with confident movements. 3 shots, 3 misses. He glanced over at Corinne, who was making notes in her book. "Something funny about my shooting range, girl?" he challenged. "No, sir," she responded quietly. "Then what are you scribbling over there?" He approached, snatching her notebook before she could react. Inside were complex mathematical calculations, wind patterns, and trajectory adjustments. "Playing physicist while real operators work?" Merrick mocked, showing the notebook to others. "She probably doesn't even know which end the bullet comes out." The team laughed, except for Chief Petty Officer Halston, the oldest member, who studied Corinne with narrowed eyes. Merrick continued pushing. "What do you think of our performance today, Miss Range Tech? Any professional opinions?" Corinne remained composed. "Just documenting variables, sir." "Variables?" Merrick smirked. "Like what?" "Wind speed shifting between shots, mirage effect increasing with heat. The 4th target mount is tilted 0.7 degrees left." Her voice was soft but precise. The SEALs exchanged looks, half amused, half irritated by her specificity. "Well, thank you for the science lesson, Professor," Merrick said with exaggerated politeness. "I'm sure that's very helpful." Corinne nodded once and returned to her station. She knew better than to engage further. Her job was to remain in the background, to be the invisible infrastructure that made their training possible. Nothing more. As the day progressed, frustration mounted. Even the more experienced shooters struggled with the distant target. Commander Thorne observed with growing displeasure, occasionally barking corrections. The mood darkened with each failed attempt. During a brief break, Corinne moved to adjust the distant target, her hands moving with surgeon-like precision. She measured angles, checked wind flags, and made minute corrections to the mounting system. Chief Halston approached silently, watching her work. "You've done this before," he stated quietly. "Just my job, Chief," she responded without looking up. "Not what I meant." His voice remained low, almost conversational. "You move like someone who knows more than just target setup." Corin straightened, meeting his gaze briefly. There was something knowing in his eyes, something that made her pulse quicken slightly. "I take pride in doing my job well," she said carefully. Halston's weathered face revealed nothing. "Pride's good, accuracy's better." The break ended. The team returned to their positions, determination renewed. Halston settled behind his rifle, making adjustments based on his previous attempts. Corinne watched him from her peripheral vision as she pretended to focus on her clipboard. His first shot missed, so did his second. On the third, he adjusted something on his scope, took a breath, and fired. The bullet struck the edge of the target, not center, but a hit nonetheless. A small cheer went up from the team. "That's how it's done," Merrick said, clapping Halston on the shoulder. "Old man still got it." Halston didn't join in the celebration. Instead, he studied the target through his spotting scope, then glanced back at Corin. She quickly looked down at her clipboard, but not before he caught her watching. After a few more shooters tried their luck, Halston approached Corinne again. "You disagree with something," he said. It wasn't a question. "Sir? You had a look when I made that shot." Corin hesitated. "It's not my place to comment, Chief. I'm making it your place." His tone was firm, but not unkind. "Something's off, and you see it. What is it?" Corin glanced around, ensuring no one else was within earshot. "Your windage adjustment. It compensated for the current conditions, but the wind's shifting pattern suggests it won't hold for the next series of shots." Halston's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a very specific assessment." "Just an observation, sir." "Based on what?" "Mathematics, physics, observable patterns." She gestured subtly toward the distant heat waves. "The mirage indicates air movement that the flags haven't caught yet." Halston studied her for a long moment. "Show me." Corinne stepped back. "I should return to my station, sir." An unexpected decision. Halston unstrapped his rifle and extended it toward her. "Your turn." Complete silence fell over the range. The nearby SEALs turned to stare. Commander Thorne started to intervene, but Halston raised his hand slightly. "Sir, with respect, let's see what our range assistant knows." Thorne's eyes narrowed, but he nodded once. Corinne hesitated, looking at the offered weapon. 5 years of careful anonymity weighed against a lifetime of training. 5 years of being invisible, of being nobody, balanced on the edge of a moment. "This isn't necessary," she said quietly. "I think it is," Halston replied, still holding out the rifle. Lieutenant Merrick approached, smirking. "What's going on, Chief? Giving the civilian a shooting lesson?" "Something like that," Halston answered without taking his eyes off Corin. "This I've got to see," Merrick said, crossing his arms. Other SEALs gathered around, conversations hushed, attention focused on the unexpected scene. Corinne felt the weight of their stares, the weight of expectations, both their low ones and Halston's seemingly high ones. She had worked so hard to be forgettable, to be the person no one remembered after leaving a room. Now, suddenly, she was the center of attention. "Miss Lavelle," Commander Thorne said, his voice carrying across the range, "you don't have to do this." "Actually, sir," Halston interjected, "I think she does." Something in his tone made Corinne look up sharply. There was recognition there, buried beneath professional courtesy. Recognition she hadn't seen in years. With deliberate calm, she took the rifle. In that moment, something changed. Her shoulders aligned differently. Her breathing slowed visibly. She inspected the weapon with practiced hands, checking the scope settings with the familiarity of someone greeting an old friend. Without using a spotter, she positioned herself, feet shoulder-width apart. Her mental calculations were automatic, instinctive after thousands of hours of training. She factored in distance, wind speed, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, the Coriolis effect, and the subtle tilt of the earth beneath her feet. One deep breath. Exhale halfway. Squeeze. The shot rang out across the desert. 3 seconds later, the furthest target sang with a clean hit, dead center. Stunned silence enveloped the range. Corinne handed the rifle back to Halston, her expression carefully neutral. "Lucky shot," Merrick muttered. Halston reloaded. "Again." Corinne took the rifle once more, another perfect hit, then another. Commander Thorne stepped forward. "Who are you?" "Just a range technician, sir." "No range technician shoots like that," Thorne pressed. "Those are competition-level shots." Halston was examining her hands. "Those aren't civilian hands. Those are shooters' hands." The atmosphere shifted completely. Respect and confusion replaced mockery. "I think," Halston said slowly, "we might owe Miss Lavelle an apology." His eyes held a question, one Corin wasn't ready to answer. The distant target stood as evidence. 3 perfect holes clustered so tightly they almost formed one. Evidence of skill that couldn't be explained away, couldn't be hidden behind paperwork and a civilian job title. Evidence that threatened to unravel 5 years of careful obscurity. Corinne knew, as she looked at the stunned faces around her, that her carefully constructed invisibility had just shattered, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what came next. Halston suddenly stood at attention. "Gentlemen, I believe we're in the presence of Deadshot Lavelle." Recognition dawned on the older SEALs' faces. The younger ones looked confused. "Ghost Recon, Operation Kingfisher," Halston explained. 5 years ago, extraction mission went sideways. Rescue team surrounded, commander down. Mission records indicate a single sniper held off enemy advances for 19 hours. 43 confirmed kills. No misses. Corin said nothing, eyes lowered. Commander Thorne stepped forward. "The records said the sniper died covering the evacuation." "Records say a lot of things, sir," Halston responded. Merrick looked bewildered. "Wait, you're telling me she's—" Halston cut him off. "Master Sergeant Corinne Lavelle, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, posthumously." The entire team now stood at attention. Commander Thorne saluted, followed by every SEAL on the range. Corinne finally looked up, emotion breaking through her careful composure. "I didn't want any of this," she said quietly. "The recognition, the questions." "Why here?" Thorne asked. "Why a range assistant?" "Because I understand trajectories, sir. Not just bullets, decisions, consequences." She paused. "After Kingfisher, my team was gone. My identity was gone. But this," she gestured to the range, "this makes sense to me." Halston asked the question everyone was thinking. "How did you recognize me?" "Your shooting stance, the way you account for your right shoulder injury. I remember every shooter I've ever spotted for." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Including you, Chief. Fallujah, 2019. You've improved your trigger control." Halston's eyes widened in recognition. "The training camp outside Balad. You were there? Different name, different face." Corinne shrugged. "Same job." Commander Thorne dismissed the other SEALs, ordering them back to their quarters. Only he, Halston, and Merrick remained with Corinne at the range. "We should take this conversation somewhere private," Thorne said. They relocated to a small briefing room. Once the door closed, Thorne turned to Corin. "I need to understand what I'm dealing with here, Sergeant." "Former Sergeant," she corrected gently. "Officially, I'm deceased." "Clearly not," Merrick interjected. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by a complex mixture of confusion and grudging respect. "After Kingfisher, I was given options," Corinne explained. "The mission was classified. The details remained sealed. I was told I could receive my honors publicly, or I could continue serving in a different capacity." "Deep cover?" Thorne asked. "Something like that." She folded her hands on the table. "I chose to continue serving." "As what?" Merrick pressed. Halston shot him a warning look. "That's not our business, Lieutenant." "For 3 years, I worked where I was needed," Corinne continued, choosing her words carefully, "until an injury made field operations impossible." Her hand unconsciously moved to her left side. "After recovery, I was offered retirement with full benefits under my new identity, or transition to support roles." "And you chose this," Thorne said, "setting up targets for SEALs who treat you like furniture." "I chose something familiar, something that let me stay connected to the work without being in the field." She met his gaze steadily. And yes, something that let me remain invisible. The perfect cover, Halston mused. The person no one bothers to really see. Until today, she acknowledged. Thorne leaned forward. I have questions about Kingfisher. I can't discuss operational details, Commander. I'm not asking for classified information. I'm asking why one of my men recognized you when your own file says you died in action. Corin glanced at Halston. Chief Halston was part of the QRF that came from my team. He never saw my face, but he saw me work. Snipers recognize other snipers, don't they, Chief? Halston nodded slowly. The rhythm of your breathing, the way you handled the weapon, it triggered something, but I couldn't place it until I saw you shoot. 19 hours, Merrick said quietly. That's how long the report says you held that position. Alone. I wasn't keeping track of time, Corin replied. 43 confirmed kills, Thorne added. No misses. I couldn't afford to miss, sir. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Not a boast, simply a statement of fact. Lives had depended on her precision. One miss could have meant the death of the entire extraction team. What happens now? Merrick finally asked. Thorne straightened. Now, we respect the classification. Master Sergeant Lavelle died heroically during Operation Kingfisher. Ms. Lavelle is our civilian range technician who happens to be an excellent marksman. With respect, sir, Halston interjected, we're wasting a resource. Someone with her skill set shouldn't be setting up targets. That's not our decision to make, Chief, Thorne replied. He turned to Corin. But if you wanted something more, I could make some calls. I don't, she said firmly. My current role suits me. Merrick looked unconvinced. You're telling me you're content being invisible? After what you've accomplished? Corinne studied him for a moment. Lieutenant, have you ever had to make 43 perfect shots, knowing each one meant someone lived or died? No, ma'am. Then understand when I say that anonymity can be a gift. She stood up. If there's nothing else, Commander, I should finish my duties at the range. Thorne nodded. Dismissed. And Sergeant, thank you for your service. She paused at the door. Please, it's just Corinne now. As she walked back to the range, Halston caught up with her. They really think you're dead, don't they? The highest levels. As far as the Pentagon is concerned, Corinne Lavelle died covering the evacuation of her team, she confirmed. Only a handful of people know otherwise. And now us, he said. And now you, she agreed, which complicates things. I won't say anything. I know you won't, Chief. She stopped walking and faced him directly. But recognition has a way of spreading. Questions get asked, records get examined. You think you'll be reassigned? She nodded. Probably, once your commander files his report. Would that be so bad, getting back into the real work? Corin smiled faintly. What makes you think this isn't real work? Every adjustment I make on these targets affects how you train, how you perform when it matters. I might not be behind a rifle anymore, but I'm still saving lives. Halston considered this. Fair point. But you didn't answer my question. Would it be so bad? She looked out across the desert range, the targets gleaming in the afternoon sun. I've made peace with who I am now, Chief, with what I can and can't do anymore. That's not something I'm eager to disrupt. They parted ways, Halston returning to his team, Corinne to her station. As she packed up equipment, she felt the subtle shift in the air around her. The other range personnel gave her curious glances. Word had spread, as it always did on military bases. That evening, Corinne sat alone in her small on-base housing unit, a sparse one-bedroom apartment that reflected her minimalist approach to life. A knock at her door interrupted her dinner. Commander Thorne stood outside, his expression grave. May I come in? She stepped aside to let him enter. Sir, I've spoken with my superiors, he said without preamble. They're aware of the situation. I expected as much. They want to meet with you, tomorrow, 0800. Corinne nodded. I'll be there. For what it's worth, Thorne added, I told them you're an asset to this facility. Thank you, sir. After he left, Corinne opened her closet and pushed aside civilian clothes to reveal a small locked box. Inside was a single photograph, a team of 6 soldiers in desert camouflage, arms around each other's shoulders. She was in the middle, younger, hair shorter, eyes brighter. The only woman in the group, her team, her family. All gone now, except in memory. She returned the photo to its hiding place. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it with the same precision and control she applied to everything else in her life. The next morning, Corinne entered the commander's office exactly at 0800. 3 men waited inside: Commander Thorne, a stern-looking colonel she didn't recognize, and a man in a suit who screamed intelligence agency. Master Sergeant Lavelle, the colonel greeted her. Or should I say, Ms. Lavelle? Either is fine, sir, she replied, standing at attention despite her civilian clothing. I'm Colonel Westfield. This is Mr. Price from our intelligence division. He gestured to the suited man. We've been reviewing your situation. I understand, sir. Do you? Price spoke for the first time. Because from where I sit, we have a serious breach of operational security. A ghost suddenly appearing on a military base, revealing classified details to personnel without proper clearance. With respect, Corin replied evenly, I revealed nothing classified. Chief Halston recognized me from a previous deployment. The details of Operation Kingfisher remain sealed. The very fact that you're alive is classified, Price countered. I'm aware of that, sir. Colonel Westfield stepped in. The question now is what to do about it. I have my transfer papers ready to sign, Corinne said. New identity, new location, standard protocol. That's one option, Westfield acknowledged. There's another on the table. Corinne waited. Your skills are still valuable, Sergeant, the colonel continued. Perhaps more valuable now than they were 5 years ago. We have training programs that could benefit from someone with your experience. You want me to become an instructor, Corinne stated, understanding dawning. We want to stop wasting your potential, Westfield corrected. Your injury prevents field operations but not teaching, not mentoring the next generation. My identity, she began. Would be restored, Price interjected. Officially, a clerical error would be discovered. Reports of your death would be revealed as premature. Your record would be reinstated, along with your rank and honors. And my privacy? The men exchanged glances. That would be compromised, Westfield admitted. Your story would become known. Your achievements recognized. Corin took a deep breath. May I have some time to consider? 24 hours, Price said. This situation requires resolution, one way or another. She nodded. Understood. As she left the office, Corinne found Halston waiting in the hallway. That bad? He asked, noting her expression. Not bad, just complicated. They're offering you a choice. They always do, she replied. That's the problem. The following weeks brought change. Whispers spread throughout the base. Corinne found herself visible in ways she hadn't been for years. Salutes, respectful nods, questions about her service. Commander Thorne invited her to his office 1 month after the range incident. The Pentagon has been in touch, he said without preamble. They're not happy about your resurrection. I didn't break protocol, sir, Corin replied. My cover was necessary after Kingfisher. The mission details remain classified. I'm aware. Thorne pushed a folder across his desk. They've offered you options. She examined the contents. New identity, new location, disappear again. And if I decline, then you stay as Master Sergeant Lavelle. Your record becomes unredacted. Your Medal of Honor becomes public. He leaned forward. And we could use you here, training the next generation. She closed the folder. I've been invisible a long time, Commander. Too long, perhaps. That evening, Corinne sat alone on her small porch, watching the desert sunset. Lieutenant Merrick's vehicle approached, stopping outside her quarters. He approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. Master Sergeant, he began formally, I owe you an apology. Not necessary, Lieutenant. With respect, it is. He stood awkwardly. My father was on that extraction team, Operation Kingfisher. He never told me details, but he said someone saved them that day. Someone who didn't make it out. He paused. That was you. Corinne remained silent. He has nightmares about it still. 43 shots, 43 lives. You bought them time with precision. I was just doing my job. My father is alive because of you. I never thanked you for that. After he left, Corinne made her decision. 3 days later, she stood in formal uniform for the first time in 5 years. The dark blue fabric felt strange against her skin after so long in civilian clothes. The weight of medals on her chest seemed excessive, unnecessary reminders of moments she'd rather forget. The ceremony was small but significant. Colonel Westfield presented her officially reinstated service record. Commander Thorne awarded her Medal of Honor, no longer listed as posthumous. Chief Halston and the SEAL team stood at attention, their respect evident in every rigid line of their posture. Master Sergeant Corinne Lavelle, Colonel Westfield announced, "It is my honor to welcome you back to active duty. Your new assignment begins immediately as head marksmanship instructor for Special Operations training." She accepted the orders with a crisp salute. "Thank you, sir. I'll serve with distinction." Afterward, during the modest reception, Halston approached. "How does it feel? Being back in uniform?" "Heavier than I remembered," she admitted, "but not in a bad way." "The weight of responsibility," he nodded, "suits you better than hiding." "I wasn't hiding, Chief. I was recovering." "For 5 years?" She met his gaze. "Some wounds take longer to heal than others." His expression softened. "Fair enough, but I'm glad you're back." "I never left," she reminded him. "Just changed positions." "You know what I mean." She did. The difference between existing and living, between surviving and thriving, between invisibility and recognition. Her first day as an instructor came with unexpected challenges. Standing before a class of 20 snipers in training, she faced not skepticism, but excessive reverence. Her reputation had preceded her, amplified by rumors and speculation. "The first thing you need to understand," she began, "is that I'm not a legend. I'm not a ghost story. I'm a soldier who did her job under difficult circumstances. The same job you're training to do." A young corporal raised his hand. "Is it true you took out 43 hostiles without missing a single shot, ma'am?" "That's what the record states," she replied evenly. "But focusing on numbers misses the point. I didn't survive because I was perfect. I survived because I was prepared. That's what I'm here to teach you." Over the following months, Corinne developed a training program unlike any other. She emphasized not just technical proficiency, but mental discipline. Not just accuracy, but adaptability. Her students learned to calculate trajectory variables in their heads, to read environmental conditions instinctively, to understand the psychology of both shooter and target. "The difference between a good shot and a great one isn't talent," she told them. "It's preparation, precision, and perspective. Know your weapon, know your environment, know yourself." Her methods were unconventional, but effective. Qualification scores improved dramatically. Other instructors began adopting her techniques. Commander Thorne received commendations from higher command for the program's success. Lieutenant Merrick became a regular visitor to her classes, often observing from the back. One day, after the students had departed, he approached her target setup. "My father's retiring next month," he said. 30 years of service." "That's commendable," Corinne replied, continuing her work. "He'd like to meet you, properly, I mean, if you're willing." She paused, considering. "I'm not good with ceremonies, Lieutenant." "This wouldn't be official, just dinner, family." He hesitated. "He says he owes you his life. All of them do." Corinne looked out across the range to the distant targets shimmering in the heat. "I'll think about it." That night, alone in her quarters, Corinne pulled out the photograph of her team again. 5 faces alongside hers, 5 lives that hadn't made it out. She traced each face with her finger, remembering names, voices, the small details that made them real. Captain Reed with his terrible jokes. Specialist Wong, who could field strip any weapon blindfolded. Sergeant Martinez and his endless supply of beef jerky. Corporal Jackson, who wrote poetry between missions. Lieutenant Collins, who carried his daughter's drawing in his helmet. All gone. While she remained. The survivor's guilt had been her constant companion for 5 years. It had driven her into the shadows, into anonymity, into a life where expectations were low and connections minimal, where she could exist without really living. But now, looking at their faces, she realized something. They wouldn't have wanted that for her. They had fought to live, not merely survive. They had been vibrant, passionate, fully engaged with the world around them. By hiding herself away, she wasn't honoring their memory. She was diminishing it. The next day, she approached Commander Thorne. "I'd like to implement a new training module," she said, "something beyond technical skills." "What did you have in mind?" "Resilience training, for before and after deployment, how to process what you've experienced, how to carry it forward without being crushed under the weight." Thorne studied her for a moment. "That's not typically part of marksmanship training." "It should be," she replied firmly. "The psychological component is as important as the physical. We train them how to take lives. We should train them how to live with that afterward." After a long moment, he nodded. "Develop the program. I'll make sure you get the resources you need." 2 weeks later, Corinne found herself at a small restaurant off base. Lieutenant Merrick and an older man, who could only be his father, waited at a corner table. Master Sergeant James Merrick Sr. stood as she approached, his eyes bright with emotion. "Sergeant Lavelle," he said, voice thick. "It's an honor." "The honor is mine, Master Sergeant," she replied. "James, please." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I've waited a long time for this opportunity." Over dinner, they talked. Not about Kingfisher specifically. Those details remained classified, but about the before and after, about recovery and resilience, about finding purpose in the wake of trauma. "I tried to find you," he admitted. "After, they told us you didn't make it." "That was the official story," she acknowledged. "But you did make it." "Parts of me did." He nodded in understanding. "That's how it is, isn't it? We leave pieces behind, bring back others we didn't have before." As the evening concluded, James Sr. reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. "I wanted you to have this. It's not official, not ceremonial, just something from those of us who made it out that day." Inside was a simple silver compass. Engraved on the back were the words, "When we lost our way, you pointed true." Corinne ran her fingers over the inscription. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied. "Just know that every day I've had with my family since then, every moment I've had with my son, is because of you. We all feel the same way, those of us who were there." 3 months later, a new class of snipers prepared for their final qualification. Corinne walked the line, offering last-minute guidance. Chief Halston joined her, now officially part of the training cadre. "They're looking good," he observed. "Your influence is obvious." "They've put in the work," she replied. "I just pointed them in the right direction." "Like a good spotter always does." She smiled at that. "Exactly." As the qualification began, Corinne felt a sense of completion, of purpose fulfilled. She was no longer hiding in the shadows, no longer diminishing her light to remain unseen. Instead, she was using that light to illuminate the path for others. The final shooter stepped up to the line, a young woman who had struggled with confidence throughout the course. Corinne moved closer, speaking quietly. "Remember what we discussed. It's not about the target, it's about the space between breaths. Find that moment of perfect stillness." The shooter nodded, settling into position. 1 breath, 2. The shot rang out, striking center mass on the distant target. "Well done," Corinne said. "I had a good teacher," the young woman replied. Later, as the sun set over the range, Corinne stood alone, watching the changing colors paint the desert landscape. Lieutenant Merrick approached, now familiar enough to skip formalities. "Another successful class," he said. "They did well," she agreed. "My father wanted me to tell you something. He's been speaking with the others from that day. They're creating a scholarship fund for veterans. They're naming it after you." Corinne turned to face him, surprised. "They don't need to do that. They want to. It's their way of multiplying the impact you had. 1 shot, 43 lives. Now those lives will help countless others." She considered this, the unexpected ripples of one moment extending outward through time, touching lives she would never know. "Tell them thank you," she said finally. "Tell them it matters." As the sky darkened and stars appeared, Corinne remained at the range, the silver compass in her palm catching the last light of day. She had spent so long trying to disappear, to become invisible, to hide from her own story. Now she understood that some lights couldn't be hidden, and perhaps they were never meant to be. The next morning, she would stand before a new class. She would teach them about trajectory and wind patterns, about breath control and trigger discipline. But she would also teach them about resilience, about carrying weight without breaking, about finding their way back when the path disappeared. Because sometimes the most important target wasn't downrange. Sometimes it was within, and that was a shot that required the steadiest hand of all.